Investing should be easy, right? For most people, though, the process of investing can be daunting, and savvy investing, impossible. Here at Alliant Retirement and Investment Services, we don't think it should be that way. So we asked two of our financial consultants, Christian Chapluha and Tom Davia, to share their advice with you. They're here to walk us through the fundamentals of investing so we can make informed and better decisions with our money and what we need to do to prepare for the road ahead.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 14 of our Invest Savvy podcast. I'm your host, Tom Davia, and today we're joined by a special guest, Karen Hoffman, Vice President of Advanced Retirement Planning at Prudential Financial. Today, we'll be discussing navigating today's tax environment. In her current position, Karen is responsible for speaking with financial professionals and clients about ways to effectively accumulate, protect, and distribute wealth. Karen has more than 34 years of experience in the financial services industry. She has been an invited speaker nationwide on a variety of retirement planning, advanced markets, and other financial topics. Karen has also taught continuing education courses for certified financial planners, attorneys, and certified public accountants. Born and educated in London, Karen has earned the Chartered Life Underwriter, Chartered Financial Consultant, and the Chartered Advisor for Senior Living designations. Thank you for joining me, Karen.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
I would like to start today's episode with a quote from Albert Einstein. "The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax." Now, that is coming from a genius and a feeling shared by many. So hopefully you and I could simplify a few of the new tax laws and share a couple of tax saving strategies today. Let's get started and talk about some new legislation called the Secure Act 2.0, which was passed in the last few hours of 2022. It covers an increase in the required minimum distribution ages for retirement accounts, along with many other provisions. So Karen, can you share your perspective or takeaways from this new legislation?
Thanks, Tom. Yes, it's been interesting the last few weeks. We've been discussing this quite a bit. As you said, it passed right at the end of the year. We were hoping to see it pass earlier, but it got held up. It's quite an interesting passage designed really to do two things: to encourage more businesses to offer retirement plans to their employees, and really to encourage employees, i.e. people like us, to save more for retirement. It really was the biggest pension legislation since 2006. So what I'm going to do is back up a little bit and talk about the first Secure Act 1.0. And it really didn't affect us in too many ways, but what it did is it really eliminated for most people, besides spouses, the stretch rules for IRAs and qualified plans. So in the past, I could inherit my mom or dad's IRA. I could stretch the payments out, taking distributions over my lifetime, which could be anywhere from 20 to 50 years. Right. And they really did eliminate that for most people. Now, why did they do that? They did that because they wanted revenue. They figured by forcing people to take those distributions over what's now a 10-year period, they actually have condensed it to 10 years, which means that they get more taxes, basically. But the new Secure Act 2.0 really did a few different things, huge benefits to us in terms of adding some things. So I'll just quickly go through some of the key provisions. The first thing really is they increased the RMD age. What's the RMD? Required minimum date. That means the day or the date or the year that you have to start taking distributions from your qualified accounts. That's your 401ks, your IRAs, your 403bs. And they actually moved it from 70 and a half. Now it's 73. And in 10 years from now, it's going to be 75. So for those of you that don't want to take distributions or have other sources of income in retirement, it's kind of a good thing, right? But the bad news is by forcing those RMD ages up to an older age, it means that those distributions are larger. Now, it could be good, could be bad, right? If they're larger, they're going to be taxed higher. So that's just the one downside. But here's what they did do. They increased catch-up contributions, allowing people over the age of 50 to put more in. They've expanded some of the Roth contributions. They've eliminated distributions from Roth 401k accounts for those in retirement, so you don't have to take your required minimum distributions. One of the great things is they're allowing 529 plans, which is education, saving for college for the kids. if the kids don't go to college, they actually are allowing those 529 plans now to be rolled over to Roth IRAs. They've also put in something called an emergency savings account, where an employer will allow you to take money out of your qualified accounts for, emergencies with no taxes, no penalties. They've reduced penalties for people not taking their required minimum distribution. Let's say they forgot or they missed it, so they've lowered those penalties. Very good thing. They're also doing something called a student loan matching program. Basically, you can add to your 401k for student loan matching if an employer wants to do that. The other thing that's kind of interesting is they've added this, what they call a retirement savings lost and found, which in essence is about $1.3 trillion sitting in retirement accounts unclaimed. People don't know that they're the beneficiaries of these accounts. So they've opened up this database. Now people can go search, which is great. I think we're all going to look and see if we have any money that's coming to us, right?
Have they released that database or where to find
Not
that?
yet, not yet. This is all just kind of in play right now. And then the last thing, again, I think this is really good for a lot of us, is they're allowing 401k plans to have some kind of annuity payout, meaning instead of just taking a distribution or taking a lump sum rollover, they're allowing people to actually annuitize their 401k, so they get sort of the equivalent of a pension coming from that 401k. Again, the details haven't been released, how it's going to happen. Not all employers are going to want to do that. I think there's more costs involved. So it's probably going to be for the bigger 401k accounts. And I don't think that these types of annuities are going to quite look like the retail type annuities that we can buy on our own.
Right.
So those are the main key provisions, Tom.
Yeah. Two things kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
The first is the 529 plan to the Roth.
Yes.
Like a $35,000 limit, and it must be the beneficiary of the 529 plan.
Yeah. At this point in time, if a beneficiary doesn't use that money to go to college, they can roll over up to, during their lifetime, $35,000 of that to their own Roth IRA, which is great because then they can tap into that for retirement or for other things, tax-free, penalty-free. However, there's a couple of nuances. The 529 plan must have been open for 15 years or more. So we can't all run out there and open a 529 plan and then roll it to a Roth. The account has to be there for 15 years. And the other thing that we're not sure about, Tom, is what if I change a beneficiary? What if I change the 529 to myself as a beneficiary? Let's say my children didn't use it or for whatever reason. We don't know if it's just the original beneficiary or it could be a changed beneficiary, or do they have to start a new 15-year clock? Kind of a gray area there.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Look for further clarification from the IRS and see how that pans out. One thing you mentioned as well is more access to funds for emergencies. Would that fall under exceptions to the 10% early distribution penalty?
Yeah, so basically, beginning in 2024, employers can establish an emergency savings account where employees can save up to $2,500 in a Roth-style account. And they haven't really clarified what an emergency is, but if they need it, they can actually take a distribution from that Roth-style account, tax-free, penalty-free, if it's a qualified distribution or if it's an emergency.
Got it. A lot of changes there. Some things that we need to keep an eye on. Some things take effect right away. And like you said, some will take effect in the future as well. Required distribution age goes up in 10 years all the way to 75. Good things in there.
Definitely. But as I said, just bear in mind that if you do go ahead and wait it out to 75 or to 73 now, that RMD, that distribution that's coming from your IRA will be taxed at a higher rate because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act sunsetting at the end of 2025. Those income tax payments may be higher.
Right.
And also bear in mind, Tom, that when you're taking a larger RMD, it could have a pretty big effect on your Social Security taxation, meaning more of your Social Security gets taxed. And it also may have an effect on your Medicare Part B, Part D premiums because they're all tied into your adjusted gross income, right? So when people are thinking about taking that RMD day out to a higher age, they really have to consider their other income at that time because it could be detrimental to them. What we're suggesting, Tom, is a lot of people don't wait to 73 or to 75. What we're saying, and again, everybody's situation is different, But what we're saying is if you possibly can, start taking those distributions early, say after 59 and a half, because you don't want a penalty, right? Start taking those distributions early, paying the taxes at a lower rate. If you are in a lower rate, which you most likely are at this point in time, because we do know taxes are going to go up for sure. And so it might be better to start taking that out slowly, paying the taxes now and not waiting until that later date. You may be in, a higher tax bracket.
And I think we're going down this road. You and I have talked about it in the past, but Roth conversions. We have a episode of a podcast on Roth conversions. I've done webinars. You and I did a presentation too, but I think all the things you're mentioning here are falling under that category of maybe reducing the required distribution because you've taken it already. So many good things about those Roth conversions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. I've been doing what I call slow Roth conversions over many years myself. It's hard to do it because you do have to add it into income and you have to pay taxes on it. But in my mind, it's all good because now you get not huge, big amounts, but small amounts. That way I know that money is now tax-free when I need it in retirement, or the growth from that money is going to be tax-free when I need it. In other words, I don't want to be paying a lot of taxes in retirement when I'm not working, when I'm not earning, right? And so if you can afford to do it, you can do these without penalty. There's no limit to what you can do. There's no requirements. You can do as much as you want or as little as you want, but it makes a lot of sense to start moving some of those IRAs into Roths if you can.
Right. And I know it's a bigger conversation than we're having today, but it may help a surviving spouse who might go into an individual tax bracket and have to pay more taxes. And then finally, beneficiaries. They don't have to worry about that 10-year rule and taking money out and adding it to income that they already have.
Exactly. Especially if you've got a beneficiary, Tom, that does well for themselves. They have nice income. All of a sudden now you're going to force your IRA into their income, right? And that could push them up into a higher tax bracket.
Right.
And a lot of people are actually looking at that and saying, well, I don't want to do that to my beneficiaries. I don't want to do that to my heirs. Why don't I just, for my benefit, start, converting it so when I take it out, it's tax-free. And also when I pass it on, it's tax-free.
And I'll just mention, as financial consultants, that's why we're here for the membership of the credit union, to have these types of conversations, see if it makes some sense. We talked about Tax Cut and Jobs Act. With that sunsetting, can you talk a little bit on the risk of higher taxes on a portfolio or for an investor, or tax efficient investing in a portfolio?
I look at it from tax diversification. Everybody wants to diversify their assets, right? Their investments. But does everybody look at diversifying their taxes? And I kind of look at it very simply in buckets of money. So everybody's got a bucket of money that they have, their investments, their CDs, their stocks and bonds. And that's sort of the tax now bucket. I'm paying taxes now, either at ordinary income rates or capital gains rates, right? So that's your tax now. And then if you look at your portfolios, a lot of us have most of our investments probably in that tax later bucket, right? That's your 401ks, your IRAs. That's the bucket that we're not paying taxes on right now, but that's the bucket we just talked about, Tom, where we will be paying taxes on it later at the highest tax rate.
Right.
And then there's the tax-free bucket. How much do you have in your tax-free bucket? Now, what am I talking about tax-free bucket? I'm talking about Roths, munis. I'm also talking about cash coming out of life insurance policies. A lot of us put quite a bit of money into life insurance to grow tax deferred, but a lot of you probably do not realize that any money coming out of that, which is supplementing our retirement, is also tax-free. So you should look at those three buckets and say, how much do I have in what bucket? And can I reallocate or move some of those investments to those other types of tax preferred buckets?
Right. I think that kind of goes along with the bucket strategy in financial planning and income distribution, short-term cash available to us to take distributions. Longer term bucket has our market exposures. So if we go through something like 2022, where stocks and bonds are down at the same time, I'm still living off of the tax efficient bucket number one and taking those distributions without having to worry about those market fluctuations hurting my monthly income.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can push yourself into a higher tax bracket without even knowing it.
Right.
because you're not sure which bucket you should be pulling money out of, and you can switch. If taxes, or like I said, the market goes up, maybe I'll switch to a different bucket. But having it diversified like that, Tom, really gives you the flexibility. And also going back to Medicare premiums and Social Security, if I'm pulling more out of that tax deferred bucket, as I said earlier, it's going to affect your Social Security check, right? Not the check itself, but how much of the taxes you're paying on the check. And paying those Medicare premiums, it might push you into another tax bracket. Now your Medicare premiums double. And as you said, when you lose a spouse, you're now going to lose that joint deduction and you're going to go to single, which now could even push you up higher.
A theme in this conversation is we want to pay less taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to pay more than we're required to. We're required to pay a certain amount, but we want to pay less taxes, and we want to be proactive about our tax planning in the future. With that said, is there anything coming up, any future legislation, any tips that you can give us maybe for the first quarter for wrapping up 2022 or looking ahead to 2023 taxes? Anything that we should keep an eye on?
The only thing that I read lately is we're still going to see some legislation. I don't know if it's going to be this year or the next presidency or whatever it is, but let me just tell you one thing, Tom. We have a huge deficit right now, and they've got to find a way to pay that down. And how do you pay a huge deficit down? You drop programs, you drop social programs like Medicare or Medicaid. They can't do that. You can't change Social Security. That's going to be impossible. So the only way that they can go after wealthier people is to change some of those loopholes when it comes to things like estate planning. We expect in the next few years, because they had multiple proposals, 2019, 2020, 2021, to go after estates, right? Lower that estate tax exclusion from what it is right now, which is pretty high. It's about 12 million per person, down to about 3 million a person. They keep bringing that up, and I don't think that's going away. They're also trying to get into loopholes that wealthier people take advantage of when it comes to moving assets from their estates to avoid estate tax. I think that's what we're going to see more of in the next few years, because that's a huge amount of revenue that they're not collecting.
To that, I had a conversation with a client that was trying to lock in all today's estate tax rates, and they were trying to set up trusts. And I think short of doing that, I think you're not going to be able to lock in anything that we have today. Is that correct?
If you don't lock it in today, and again, we've only got 3 more years, or 2023, so the end of 2025, it is going to revert down to the original 5 million index for inflation. So anybody that has just assets, I'm talking about homes, cars, property, whatever they own is their estate. For those clients, if they don't take advantage of the highest estate tax exclusions, they are going to be missing the boat, because I don't think we're ever going to see these high exclusion amounts. And if people are wary about gifting irrevocably, moving assets out of their estates into trusts, there are some very flexible ways to do it without having to do it irrevocably. There are some very creative, very flexible estate planning strategies where you don't have to give up the asset. You don't have to gift the asset, but you can take advantage of some of the flexible planning. I mean, there's many, many different types of trusts, right? And they're not always irrevocable, but they become irrevocable at the time they need to become irrevocable.
Bigger discussion than we have time for today.
Absolutely.
We talked about the tax law changes, the estate exclusion amounts. With a split Congress, is that still on the table? Do you think that's going to be pushed back a few years, or is there anything kind of imminent coming?
I haven't seen anything in the last year. This Secure Act 2.0 got pushed and pushed and pushed out, and then finally it got approved right at the end of the year. I have seen nothing since. So I think they've got bigger things to deal with right now.
So with that said, Karen, I think it's a good time to wrap it up for today. I do appreciate your time and support and Prudential for helping putting this on today. We look forward to talking with you in the future on another event.
Thanks, Tom.
If you do have any questions on this topic, we're able to help you with efficient tax planning, estate planning, full financial planning, income distribution, and plain old portfolio review to take a look at how things are working in the light of 2022. And I'd like to say thank you again to Karen Hoffman, Vice President of Advanced Retirement Planning at Prudential Financial. If you have any questions on today's topic of tax planning, feel free to contact myself or any of the financial consultants here at Alliant. You can find new episodes of Invest Savvy on Apple and Google Podcast and all major platforms or on our website. We invite you to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for new episodes and educational webinars and articles. Just search ARIS, ARIS.Alliant to like and follow.
Thank you for listening to Invest Savvy, advice you need to know. To learn more about our hosts, Kristen Chapluha and Tom Davia, and the team at Alliant Retirement and Investment Services, please visit our website at ARIS.AlliantCreditUnion.com. If you have questions for our hosts, you can submit them through our website or email investment-services@AlliantCreditUnion.com. Kristen Chapluha and Thomas Davia are registered representatives with, and securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and broker-dealer. Member FINRA SIPC, SIPC. Insurance products are offered through LPL or its licensed affiliates. Alliant Credit Union and Alliant Retirement and Investment Services, ARIS, are not registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor. Registered representatives of LPL offer products and services using ARIS and may also be employees of Alliant Credit Union. These products and services are being offered through LPL or its affiliates, which are separate entities from and not affiliates of Alliant Credit Union or ARIS. Securities and insurance offered through LPL or its affiliates are not insured by NCUA or any other government agency, not credit union guaranteed, not credit union deposits or obligations, may lose value. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No investment strategy can guarantee a profit or protect against loss. Neither LPL Financial nor its registered representatives offer tax or legal advice. Always consult a qualified tax advisor for information as to how taxes may affect your particular situation.